I always knew I was second best in my parents' eyes. For as long as I could remember, my brother Jake had been the golden child, Harvard law graduate, successful corporate attorney, and my parents' undeniable pride and joy. Meanwhile, I was Emily Parker, the responsible but overlooked daughter who'd built a modest but growing graphic design business from scratch. Every year, it was the same story. Jake's birthday was a grand affair with catered food, expensive gifts, and dozens of guests at our parents' spacious home in suburban Connecticut. My birthday? Usually a belated card with a gift card tucked inside, if I was lucky. I'd grown accustomed to the disparity, convincing myself it didn't matter. I was 32 years old, for crying out loud. Birthday parties were for children, right? Wrong. It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. Every forgotten birthday was another reminder that no matter what I achieved, I would always live in Jake's shadow. The pattern had been established early. Jake was the planned child, the son my father always wanted to carry on the family name. I was the happy accident who came along 4 years later when my mother was supposedly unable to have more children. This year was Jake's 36th birthday, and my parents had outdone themselves. They'd rented out the entire rooftop of an exclusive Manhattan restaurant, hired a live jazz band, and flown in relatives from across the country. I received my invitation 3 months in advance, with a note from my mother reminding me to dress appropriately, as if I'd show up in jeans and a t-shirt to embarrass them. Meanwhile, my own 32nd birthday had passed 2 weeks earlier, without so much as a text message from either of them. I'd spent the evening alone in my apartment with takeout sushi and a bottle of wine, scrolling through Instagram pictures of friends celebrating with their families. When I finally worked up the courage to call my mother the following day, she'd gasped in horror. "Oh, Emily, was that yesterday? I've been so busy with the preparations for Jake's party. You know how it is. We'll make it up to you, I promise." They never did. They never did. The night of Jake's party, I stood in front of my closet, debating whether to even attend. Part of me wanted to make up an excuse, a client emergency perhaps, or a sudden illness. But another part of me, the part that still desperately craved my parents' approval, knew I had to go. If I didn't, I'd never hear the end of it. I finally settled on a simple black dress that I'd designed and sewn myself, one of my few talents my mother had never quite appreciated. "Such a waste of your education," she'd say, whenever I mentioned my passion for design and fashion. "You could have been a lawyer like your brother." The taxi dropped me off at the restaurant at exactly 7:30 p.m. I could hear the music from the street, a jazzy rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon" that made me smile despite myself. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed down my dress and headed inside. The hostess directed me to the elevators, where a server was stationed to escort guests to the rooftop. "Parker party?" he confirmed with a practiced smile. "Yes," I replied, forcing a smile of my own. "I'm Emily, the sister." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps, before he nodded and ushered me into the elevator. "Right this way, Miss Parker." The elevator doors opened to reveal a scene straight out of a luxury magazine spread. String lights twinkled overhead, casting a warm glow over elegantly dressed guests mingling around high-top tables. A bar had been set up in one corner, where bartenders in crisp white shirts mixed elaborate cocktails. In the centre of it all stood my brother Jake, handsome in his tailored suit, laughing with a group of admirers. And beside him, our parents, my father Richard in his signature navy blazer with gold buttons, my mother Catherine draped in an expensive-looking silver dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They looked every bit the proud parents of a successful son. I took another deep breath and headed toward them, weaving through clusters of guests who barely gave me a second glance. Most of them were Jake's friends and colleagues, with a few relatives mixed in. I recognised my Aunt Susan, who gave me a small wave before returning to her conversation. "Emily!" Jake spotted me first, breaking away from his group to envelope me in a bear hug. Despite everything, I couldn't help but smile. Jake might have been the favourite, but he'd never been unkind about it. In his own way, he tried to make up for our parents' neglect. "You made it, and you look amazing. Is that one of yours?" He gestured to my dress. Yes, actually. Just finished it yesterday. I smoothed the fabric self-consciously. Incredible. You're so talented. He turned to the group he'd been chatting with. Hey, everyone. This is my sister Emily. She designed and made this dress herself. She's got her own business, Parker Designs. A few polite murmurs of approval followed, but I could see their interest waning already. In Jake's world of high-powered attorneys and financial wizards, a small business owner who made dresses wasn't exactly impressive. Emily. My mother appeared at my side, air-kissing both my cheeks. You're here. I was beginning to wonder. I said I'd come, didn't I? I tried to keep the edge out of my voice. Yes, well. She gave my dress a cursory glance. Is that new? It's interesting. Before I could respond, my father joined us, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. Son, the Hendersons want to introduce you to their daughter. She just made partner at Gibson Dunn. He nodded at me briefly. Emily. Dad? I leaned in for a hug that never came. Instead, he patted my arm awkwardly before steering Jake away toward an older couple standing near the bar. And just like that, I was alone again, watching as my parents paraded Jake around like a prized show horse. I made my way to the bar and ordered a gin and tonic, stronger than I would normally drink. I had a feeling I'd need it to get through the evening. As I sipped my drink, I observed the party from the periphery. My parents had spared no expense. The food was catered by a celebrity chef, the band was rumoured to have played at the White House, and the cake, when it was finally wheeled out, was an architectural masterpiece that probably cost more than my car. During the toasts, my father waxed poetic about Jake's accomplishments, his voice thick with emotion. From the day he was born, we knew Jake was destined for greatness, he said, raising his glass, and he hasn't disappointed us for a single moment. My mother wiped away a tear. We couldn't be prouder of the man you've become, she added. You're everything we ever hoped for in a child. I downed the rest of my drink in one gulp, the words stinging more than they should have. Not once did either of them mention they had another child present. Not once did they acknowledge that perhaps, just perhaps, they could be proud of both their children. After the cake was cut and distributed, I found myself cornered by my Aunt Susan, my mother's older sister, and the only relative who seemed to remember I existed. Emily, darling, she said, pulling me into a genuine hug that smelled of expensive perfume and cigarettes. It's been too long. How are you? How's the design business going? It's good, Aunt Susan. I just landed a contract with a boutique hotel chain to design their staff uniforms. It was the biggest deal of my career so far, but I'd learned not to share such news with my parents. They'd only find a way to diminish it. That's wonderful, Aunt Susan squeezed my arm. You know, I always said you had an eye for fashion. Remember those sketches you used to show me when you were little? Such talent. I smiled, grateful for her encouragement. Thanks. It's been a lot of work, but it's finally paying off. I'm not surprised. She glanced around, lowering her voice. Your parents are, well, they've always had a blind spot when it comes to you. But the rest of us see you, Emily. We see how hard you work. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my clutch. I excused myself to check it, expecting a message from a friend asking how the party was going. Instead, I found an email notification that made my blood run cold. It was from my bank, confirming a wire transfer of $50,000 from my business account to an unfamiliar recipient, a transfer I had never authorized. My hands shaking, I clicked into my banking app to check my balance. My business savings account, the one where I'd been carefully depositing money for a commercial space I'd been eyeing, was nearly empty. Only $827 remained of the $53,000 I'd accumulated over 3 years of scrimping and saving. Someone had cleaned me out. Someone had stolen nearly everything I'd worked for. Frantically, I called the bank's fraud department, stepping away from the party to a quiet corner of the rooftop. After 20 minutes on hold and another 15 answering security questions, the representative confirmed my worst fears. Yes, Ms. Parker, a wire transfer was initiated earlier today from your account. It appears to have been authorized with your correct credentials. But I didn't authorize anything. My voice rose, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. I turned away, lowering my tone. I need to stop this transfer immediately. I'm afraid the transfer has already been completed. Ms. Parker, the funds have been received by the destination account. Where? Where did my money go? I demanded. There was a pause. The recipient is listed as Parker Family Trust. Does that sound familiar to you? Parker Family Trust. My parents' trust, set up years ago primarily to benefit Jake. I'd been included as a secondary beneficiary, but I had no access to or control over the trust. Ms. Parker, are you still there? Yes, I whispered, my mind racing. Can you tell me who initiated the transfer? The request came through our online system using your credentials, the IP address. She paused. I can't give you the exact address for security reasons, but it was from the Connecticut area. Connecticut, where my parents lived, where I'd visited last weekend for Sunday dinner, leaving my laptop open while I helped my mother in the kitchen. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My own parents had stolen from me. They'd taken the money I'd worked so hard to save, money for my business, my future, my dreams, and transferred it to their family trust, which primarily benefited Jake. The room began to spin. I thanked the bank representative absently, promising to come to a branch with ID the next day to file a formal fraud claim. But even as I said the words, I knew it would be complicated. How could I accuse my own parents of theft? Would anyone believe me over them, the respected Dr. and Mrs. Parker of Westport, Connecticut? I looked across the rooftop to where they stood, champagne glasses in hand, beaming at Jake as he unwrapped an expensive-looking watch. My father clapped him on the back while my mother took photos with her phone. They looked so normal, so loving. Who would believe they were capable of stealing from their own daughter? In that moment, something inside me broke, and something else, something harder, colder, more determined, took its place. I'd spent my entire life accepting their neglect, making excuses for their behaviour, desperately seeking their approval. But this crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday this time. They'd stolen my future. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I slipped my phone back into my clutch, straightened my shoulders, and plastered a smile on my face. I would stay at this party. I would eat the cake and drink the champagne and congratulate my brother. I would hug my parents goodbye at the end of the night as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and as I rejoined the celebration, accepting a slice of cake from a passing waiter, I made a silent promise to myself. This would be the last time they underestimated me, the last time they treated me as an afterthought, the last time they stole what was rightfully mine. Because this time, I was going to fight back. The morning after Jake's party, I woke with a clear head and a clearer purpose. My first stop was the bank, where I sat across from a sympathetic fraud specialist named Marcus, explaining my situation. So you believe your parents accessed your computer while you were visiting them and used your saved credentials to transfer the money? He clarified, typing notes into his computer. Yes, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I never authorized that transfer, and I certainly never would have sent my business funds to their family trust. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral, but I could sense his skepticism. And you're certain no one else could have had access to your accounts? Positive. I'm the only one who uses my laptop, and my passwords are stored in an encrypted manager. I leaned forward. Look, I know how this sounds. Why would respectable people like my parents steal from their own daughter? But the transfer was made from their house to their trust. The evidence is pretty clear. He nodded slowly. We'll investigate, Ms. Parker. But I should warn you that these cases can be complicated when they involve family members. If your parents claim you authorized the transfer as a gift or loan— It wasn't a gift, I said firmly. It was theft, and I want my money back. Marcus handed me a form to fill out. This is our formal fraud claim. Complete it as thoroughly as possible, including any evidence you might have of unauthorized access. We'll place a temporary freeze on your accounts for security and issue you new cards. As I filled out the paperwork, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Brunch today at the club. Your father and I want to discuss something with you. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Did they know I'd discovered the theft? Were they planning to concoct some explanation? Or worse, were they going to try to manipulate me into accepting what they'd done? After a moment's hesitation, I replied, "Sorry, busy with work. Another time." I couldn't face them yet, not until I had a plan. Not until I was certain I could confront them without breaking down or backing down. From the bank, I went straight to a lawyer's office. I'd found Carol Winters through a quick online search for attorneys specialising in financial fraud. Her office was small but immaculately kept, with credentials displayed prominently on the walls. "So, let me get this straight," Carol said after I'd explained my situation. "Your parents transferred $50,000 from your business account to their family trust without your knowledge or consent, likely after accessing your computer during a visit to their home." "Yes," I confirmed. "And this trust primarily benefits my brother, though I'm technically a secondary beneficiary." She made a note. "And do you have any documentation of this money being specifically for your business? Tax records, business plans, loan applications mentioning these funds?" I nodded, pulling out my phone. "I have my business plan showing the intended use for a commercial space lease, and all my tax filings showing this as business capital. I've kept everything meticulously documented." "Smart," Carol remarked, reviewing the files I forwarded to her email. "And what about your relationship with your parents? Any history of financial disputes or them taking money from you before?" "Not taking money, no, but there's always been—" I paused, searching for the right words. "An imbalance. They've consistently favoured my brother financially, private school when I went public, fully paid college when I had to take out loans. Helped him with the down payment on his condo while I rented." I shrugged. "But stealing, this is new." Carol's expression softened slightly. "Family dynamics can be complicated, especially when money is involved. But what they've done is plainly illegal, regardless of their relationship to you." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We have several options," she replied, leaning back in her chair. "The first is to send a formal demand letter, giving them the opportunity to return the funds without legal action. Many cases resolve at this stage when the offending party realises the victim is serious about pursuing justice. And if that doesn't work, then we escalate. We can file a civil lawsuit for the stolen funds plus damages. We can also report this to the police as criminal theft. Given the amount, this would be grand theft, a felony." The word felony made my stomach tighten. As angry as I was, the thought of my parents facing criminal charges was difficult to process. "I just want my money back," I said quietly. "I understand," Carol assured me. "Most clients prefer to resolve these matters without criminal proceedings when family is involved. Let's start with the demand letter and see how they respond." As I left Carol's office with a plan in motion, I felt simultaneously lighter and heavier. The burden of indecision had been lifted, but it had been replaced by the weight of what I was about to do, formally accuse my parents of theft and demand restitution. There would be no going back from this, no pretending it was all a misunderstanding. I was drawing a line in the sand, and our relationship would never be the same. My phone buzzed again as I reached my car. Another text from my mother. "Emily, is everything all right? Your father and I need to speak with you. It's important." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to my apartment, my mind racing with questions. Did they know I'd discovered the theft? Were they planning to confess? Or concoct some explanation? Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, to demand answers face to face. But Carol had advised against any direct confrontation until the demand letter was sent. "Don't give them time to hide assets or concoct a story," she'd warned. "Let the letter be the first indication that you know what they've done." At home, I locked my door and collapsed onto my couch, the events of the past 24 hours finally catching up with me. My body felt heavy with exhaustion, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I pulled out my laptop, a new one I'd purchased that morning, not trusting my old device, and began documenting everything I could remember about my visit to my parents' house the previous weekend. I'd arrived around noon on Sunday. My mother had asked for help preparing dinner while my father and Jake watched a football game. I'd worked on some designs in the kitchen while waiting for the vegetables to roast, leaving my laptop open on the counter when my mother called me to help set the table. I'd been away from my computer for perhaps 20 minutes at most, plenty of time for someone to access my accounts if my password manager was open. I remembered returning to find my laptop closed, though I was certain I'd left it open. At the time, I'd assumed my mother had closed it to make space on the counter. Now, I wasn't so sure. As I typed these recollections, another memory surfaced. A snippet of conversation I'd overheard between my parents as I approached the kitchen after setting the table. "Just a temporary solution," my father had been saying. "We'll figure something out before the Aruba trip. Richard." I don't think... My mother had stopped abruptly when she noticed me in the doorway, quickly changing the subject to ask if I'd remembered to put out the good napkins. At the time, it had seemed like nothing, just another private conversation between my parents that didn't include me. Now the words took on a sinister new meaning. A temporary solution to what, and what trip to Aruba? I opened a new browser window and typed my brother's name into the search bar. His social media profiles were public. Jake had always loved attention, and I scrolled through his recent posts. There it was, from just 3 days ago, a photo of a tropical beach with the caption, "T-2 weeks until paradise." Chia Aruba. Family vacation. Chia blessed. I clicked through to the comments where my mother had written, "Can't wait, it's going to be the trip of a lifetime." A family vacation to Aruba that no one had mentioned to me. A vacation that, based on the hotels Jake had tagged, would cost thousands per person. A vacation they had planned while stealing the money I'd saved for my business. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture so ugly I could barely stand to look at it. My parents had stolen my money to fund a luxury vacation for themselves and Jake, a vacation I hadn't even been invited to. My phone rang, startling me. My father's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something, curiosity, anger, or perhaps a desperate hope for an innocent explanation, made me answer. "Emily." My father's voice was uncharacteristically tentative. "We've been trying to reach you. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Dad," I replied, struggling to keep my voice neutral. "Just busy with work. What's up?" "Your mother and I wanted to talk to you about something important. Can you come over for dinner tonight?" "I'm afraid I can't. I have a deadline for a client." The lie came easily. "What did you want to discuss?" There was a pause. Then my father cleared his throat. "It's about the family trust. There have been some adjustments we need to explain." "Adjustments?" I repeated, my hand tightening around the phone. "Yes, just some reallocation of assets. Nothing to worry about, but we'd prefer to discuss it in person." "Does this have anything to do with the $50,000 that was transferred from my business account yesterday?" The words escaped before I could stop them, my anger overriding Carol's advice. The silence that followed was deafening. When my father finally spoke, his voice had changed, becoming the authoritative tone he'd used throughout my childhood when his decisions were not to be questioned. "Emily, you need to understand that sometimes parents have to make difficult choices for the good of the family. If you'd come to brunch as your mother suggested, we could have explained everything properly." "Explained what, exactly?" I demanded. "How you stole my money?" "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed. "It's not stealing when it's family. The money is still in the family trust, which you're part of." "A trust I have no control over and can't access without your approval," I reminded him. "Money I saved for my business. How is that not stealing?" "Your business," he said dismissively. "That little hobby of yours hardly qualifies as a real business, Emily. Jake has a genuine career. He's making something of himself. Your mother and I simply redistributed funds to where they'll do the most good for this family." His words hit me like physical blows. My little hobby, not a real business. The dismissal of everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built on my own. "So you took my money to pay for a trip to Aruba?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. "A trip you didn't even invite me on?" Another pause. "We were going to surprise you," he said finally. The lie so transparent it would have been laughable if it weren't so painful. "The trip is a gift for Jake's birthday, but of course you're included. We just hadn't gotten around to telling you yet. Right, I said flatly. Just like you hadn't gotten around to remembering my birthday for the past 5 years. Emily, I want my money back. Dad, all of it, by the end of the week. Now, you're being unreasonable, he said, his tone hardening. That money is already allocated, the trip is paid for, and the rest is invested in the trust. You can't just demand. I'm not demanding. I'm telling you what's going to happen. Return my money. Or I'll be pursuing legal action for theft. Legal action? He sounded genuinely shocked. Against your own parents? Over a simple misunderstanding? It's not a misunderstanding when you access someone's computer without permission and transfer their money to your account. That's theft, plain and simple. And yes, I'm prepared to take legal action even against my own parents. You wouldn't dare, he said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Think about what that would do to this family, to your mother, to Jake. I have thought about it, I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. I've thought about what it means to be part of a family where I'm consistently treated as less than, where my achievements are dismissed as hobbies, where my birthday is forgotten while my brother gets lavish parties, where my hard-earned money is stolen to fund a vacation I wasn't even invited to. Emily, you have until Friday to return my money. Every cent of it. If you don't, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. And Dad, I'm not bluffing. I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I'd done it. I'd confronted him, laid down my ultimatum. There was no going back now. My phone immediately began ringing again, my father calling back, but I silenced it, then turned it off completely. I needed time to think, to process, to prepare for what came next, because deep down I knew my parents wouldn't simply return the money and apologise. That wasn't who they were. They'd fight, they'd justify, they'd try to make me the villain for daring to stand up to them. And I needed to be ready. The next morning, I awoke to a barrage of text messages and voicemails from both my parents. I ignored them all, focusing instead on meeting with Carol to finalise our demand letter. We had it couriered to my parents' home that afternoon, giving them exactly 7 days to return the full amount plus Carol's legal fees. What happens if they refuse? I asked as we reviewed the final draft. Then we file suit, Carol replied matter-of-factly. I'll be honest with you, Emily. Most family members in your parents' position return the money at this stage. The prospect of a public legal battle, especially one they're likely to lose, is usually enough to make them reconsider. I nodded, though I wasn't convinced. My parents had spent a lifetime justifying their preferential treatment of Jake. Why would this be any different? Sure enough, their response came not in the form of a returned payment, but in a letter from their own attorney, a high-powered lawyer from a prestigious firm in Hartford, someone my father probably played golf with at the country club. The letter was a masterpiece of legal doublespeak, but its essence was clear. My parents denied any wrongdoing, claimed the transfer was a mutually agreed reallocation of family resources, and suggested that any legal action would be frivolous and potentially damaging to both parties. They offered to resolve the misunderstanding by adjusting my share of the family trust, not by returning my money, but by promising me a larger portion of the trust upon their deaths. Unbelievable, Carol muttered as she read it. They're essentially saying, we're keeping your money now, but we promise you'll get more when we die. As if that helps your business today. What do we do? I asked, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. I'd hoped, despite everything, that they might recognise the gravity of what they'd done, that they might choose to make things right. We proceed with the lawsuit, Carol said firmly. Their response confirms they have no intention of returning your funds voluntarily. And Emily, we need to move quickly. There's a risk they could start hiding assets once they realise you're serious. That afternoon, we filed a civil suit against my parents for the stolen funds, plus damages. Carol also helped me file a police report for the unauthorised access of my computer and the fraudulent transfer. She warned me that the police might be reluctant to pursue criminal charges in what they might view as a family dispute, but the report would strengthen our civil case. As predicted, The detective who took my report seemed skeptical. "And you're certain you didn't authorize this transfer?" he asked for the third time. "Absolutely certain," I replied firmly. "I would never have transferred my business savings to a trust I can't access." "And your parents have never had permission to access your accounts before?" "Never. They accessed my computer without my knowledge while I was visiting their home." He nodded slowly. "Ms. Parker, I understand your frustration, but I should warn you that these cases can be difficult to prosecute, especially when family is involved. If they claim you gave them verbal permission—" "I didn't," I insisted. "And I have documentation showing this money was earmarked for my business expansion. I've been saving for years to lease a commercial space." The detective made a note. "We'll investigate, but I can't make any promises about criminal charges. Your civil case might be more straightforward." As I left the police station, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Jake. "Emily, what the hell is going on?" he demanded without preamble. "Mum is in tears, Dad is furious, and I just heard you're suing them. Over money." I took a deep breath. I'd been expecting this call, dreading it even. Jake had always been loyal to our parents, and I doubted he'd take my side now. "They stole $50,000 from my business account, Jake. Money I'd saved for years to expand my company." "That's ridiculous," he scoffed. "Why would they need to steal from you? They have plenty of money." "Apparently not enough for the luxury vacation to Aruba they've planned. The one you're going on in 2 weeks." There was a pause. "How do you know about that?" "You posted about it on Instagram," I reminded him. "Tagged the 5-star resort and everything. But that doesn't mean they stole from you to pay for it. The timing is pretty damning, Jake. They cleaned out my account 3 days after you posted about the trip." Another silence. "Look, there must be some misunderstanding. Mum and Dad wouldn't do something like that." "They admitted it," I said flatly. "Dad said they are distributed funds to where they'll do the most good for the family. Apparently, my business doesn't qualify as worthwhile." "I'm sure he didn't mean it like that," Jake said. But I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "They've always supported your designing." "My designing," I repeated. "You mean my business? The one I built from nothing, without any help from them. The one that pays my bills and was about to expand into a real storefront before they stole my savings. Emily, Jake, I love you. You're my brother and none of this is your fault. But I need you to understand something. This isn't about sibling rivalry or me being jealous of your relationship with Mum and Dad. This is about them committing a crime against me, a serious one." "A crime? Come on, Em. It's not like they robbed a bank." "No. They robbed their daughter, which is worse." He sighed heavily. "What can I do to fix this? What if I pay you back the money? Will you drop the lawsuit then?" His offer surprised me. It was generous, typical of Jake's good heart, but it missed the point entirely. "This isn't about you fixing their mistake, Jake. It's about them acknowledging what they did and making it right themselves. And honestly, it's about more than just the money now. It's about them finally respecting me and my choices." "They do respect you," he protested weakly. "No, they don't. They never have. And until they do, nothing will change." After ending the call with Jake, I sat in my car, emotionally drained but oddly calm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking my parents' approval or making excuses for their behaviour. I was standing up for myself, demanding the respect I deserved. It felt terrifying. It felt right. The next week passed in a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. My parents made several attempts to contact me directly, but following Carol's advice, I directed all communication through our attorneys. Their lawyer proposed a settlement. They would return $25,000, half the stolen amount, and drop any claim to my share of the family trust in the future. "It's insulting," Carol said when she showed me the offer. "They steal $50,000 from you, and their generous settlement is to give you back half, while also punishing you by cutting you out of the trust." "I don't care about the trust," I admitted. "I never expected to see a penny of it anyway. But I want all of my money back." "Then we counter," Carol said, already drafting a response. Full restitution of the $50,000 plus $10,000 for legal fees and damages, and we keep this settlement confidential, no gag order preventing you from discussing what happened. The day before our scheduled court appearance, Carol received a call from my parents' attorney. They had agreed to our terms with one condition: I would meet with them in person to sign the settlement agreement. It's not standard, Carol warned me. We could insist on handling everything through counsel. No, I said after a moment's consideration. I want to face them. I need to. The meeting was set for that afternoon at Carol's office, neutral territory. I arrived early, my stomach in knots despite my determination to remain calm. Carol greeted me with a reassuring smile. Remember, you hold all the cards here, she reminded me. They're agreeing to your terms because they know they'll lose in court. You have nothing to be nervous about. I nodded, though the butterflies in my stomach disagreed. Despite everything, these were still my parents. The people who had raised me, however imperfectly. Facing them as adversaries rather than as a dutiful daughter felt unnatural, wrong somehow. At precisely 2 p.m. they arrived. My father looked older than I remembered. The lines around his mouth deeper, his posture less commanding. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged. They were accompanied by their attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Emily," my mother said, taking a step toward me before Carol subtly moved to block her path. "Let's all sit down," Carol suggested smoothly, gesturing to the conference table. We took our seats, an awkward silence falling over the room. The attorneys exchanged pleasantries and reviewed the settlement documents, but I barely heard them. I was focused on my parents, trying to reconcile these subdued figures with the people who had so callously stolen from me. "Before we sign," my father said suddenly, "I'd like to speak to my daughter, alone." His attorney looked alarmed. "Dr. Parker, I don't think that's advisable at this stage." "Just 5 minutes," my father insisted. "Please." Carol looked at me questioningly. I hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. The attorneys and my mother stepped out, leaving me alone with my father across the conference table. He sat silently for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. "Emily," he finally said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I want you to know that this was never about hurting you." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "The truth is," he continued, "your mother and I have been having financial difficulties. The market downturn hit our investments hard, and some of my medical equipment investments didn't pan out. We were too proud to admit it, especially to you kids. We've always been the ones who helped, not the ones who needed help. So you decided to help yourselves to my money instead." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He winced. "It was wrong. I see that now. I convinced myself it was just borrowing, that we'd replace it before you even noticed. But that doesn't excuse what we did." "No, it doesn't," I agreed. "And it doesn't explain why you were planning an expensive vacation to Aruba if you were in financial trouble." My father looked down at his hands. "Appearances," he said quietly. "We've spent our whole lives maintaining appearances. The right neighbourhood, the right schools, the right vacations. It becomes difficult to stop. So difficult that stealing from your daughter seemed like a reasonable solution." "Nothing about this was reasonable," he admitted. "It was desperate and wrong. And I am truly sorry, Emily, not just for taking the money, but for everything else too. For not seeing your business for what it is, a genuine achievement. For not giving you the support and recognition you deserve." I studied him, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. But all I saw was an aging man who finally realised he'd made a terrible mistake. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Why not when I first confronted you?" "Pride," he said simply. "More damned pride. I couldn't admit, to you or to myself, how far I'd fallen, how badly I'd failed as a father. I didn't know what to say. This humble, apologetic version of my father was someone I'd never met before. Part of me wanted to accept his apology, to forgive and move forward. But another part, the part that had been overlooked and undervalued for 32 years, remained wary. Your mother doesn't know about our financial troubles, he added quietly. I've hidden it from her too. She thought the money was just being moved within the family trust for tax purposes. She didn't realise we were taking it from you specifically. That doesn't make it better, I pointed out. No, it doesn't, he agreed. Nothing makes this better. I just wanted you to know that your mother's role in this was less direct than mine. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door, and Carol poked her head in. Time's up, she said firmly. My father nodded, standing slowly. Thank you for listening, Emily. Whatever you decide about our relationship going forward, I understand. And I am truly sorry. The others filed back in, and we proceeded with the signing of the settlement. My parents would return the full $50,000 plus $10,000 for damages and legal fees. The money would be wire transferred to my new business account within 24 hours. In exchange, I would drop the lawsuit and the police report. As we concluded the meeting, my mother approached me hesitantly. Emily, she said, her voice trembling, will you ever be able to forgive us? I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. Behind the perfect hair and designer clothes was a woman who had made mistakes, who had favoured one child over another. Yes, but who was also human, flawed, perhaps even capable of change. I don't know, I answered honestly. I need time. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I understand. Just know that we love you. We always have, even if we've done a poor job of showing it. As they left, my father paused in the doorway. The trip to Aruba is cancelled, he said quietly, in case you were wondering. I wasn't sure why that detail mattered, but I nodded in acknowledgement. Carol waited until they were gone before turning to me with a smile. Congratulations, Emily. You stood your ground and you won. But had I? The money would be returned. Yes, justice would be served in that sense. But I'd lost something too, the comforting illusion that my parents were perfect, that they always knew best. In its place was a messier, more complicated truth. They were just people, capable of both love and terrible mistakes. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Just heard the news. Proud of you for standing up for yourself, sis. Dinner this weekend? My treat. I smiled, my first genuine smile in weeks. Some relationships could be repaired. Some bonds were strong enough to withstand even the hardest tests. As for my parents, only time would tell. True to the settlement, the money appeared in my account the next morning, all $60,000 of it. I immediately transferred $50,000 to a separate account earmarked for my business expansion, leaving the extra $10,000 as an emergency fund. With my financial situation secured, I threw myself back into my work. The boutique hotel chain was thrilled with my uniform designs, and the exposure led to inquiries from several other businesses. Within a month, I had enough steady clients to justify leasing that commercial space I'd been eyeing. A small storefront in a trendy area of downtown, with enough room for a design studio in the back. On the day I signed the lease, Jake met me at the space with a bottle of champagne and a small wrapped package. To new beginnings, he toasted after we'd popped the cork and poured 2 plastic cups full of bubbly. And to finally having a real office, I added, clinking my cup against his. About that, Jake said, handing me the package. A little office warming gift. I unwrapped it to find a beautiful brass plaque that read, Parker Designs, Emily Parker, founder and CEO. Jake, I breathed, running my fingers over the engraved letters. It's perfect. I thought you could hang it by the door, he suggested. Let everyone know exactly whose business this is. I hugged him tightly, overcome with emotion. Thank you. Not just for this, but for standing by me. Through everything. He hugged me back. Always, Em. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. I should have noticed how they treated you differently. It's not your fault, I assured him. And honestly, they treated you well because they love you. There's nothing wrong with that. But they should have treated you just as well, he insisted. You're every bit as accomplished as I am. More so, really. since you built this business on your own without their help." His words healed something in me that I hadn't even realized was still wounded, the part that had always felt less than inferior to my golden child brother. The truth was, Jake had never seen me that way. He'd always been my champion in his own quiet way. As we finished our champagne, Jake asked casually, "Have you spoken to Mum and Dad recently?" I shook my head. "Not since the settlement. I'm still processing everything." "They ask about you?" "You know, every time I see them." "What do you tell them?" "The truth. That you're doing well, that your business is thriving." He hesitated. "They're different, Em. Since all this happened. Dad especially. It's like something broke in him, but maybe in a way that needed breaking." I thought about my father's confession in Carol's office, the financial troubles he'd hidden, the desperate attempt to maintain appearances, the genuine remorse he'd expressed. It didn't excuse what they'd done, but it helped me understand it a little better. "They're coming to my place for dinner next Sunday," Jake said tentatively. "Nothing fancy, just a simple meal. I was wondering if you might want to join us." My immediate instinct was to refuse. I wasn't ready to face them, to act as if everything was normal. But then again, maybe normal wasn't what any of us needed. Maybe we needed something new, something better. "I'll think about it," I promised. "No guarantees, but I'll consider it." Jake nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's all I ask. And whatever you decide, I support you 100%. As he left, I stood alone in my new space, my space, earned through my hard work and determination. For the first time in my life, I felt truly independent, not defined by my relationship with my parents or my status as Jake's little sister, but by my own achievements. Whatever happened with my family going forward, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again allow anyone to make me feel less than worthy, to forget my birthday or dismiss my dreams, to take what was rightfully mine. This time, everything had changed, and I had changed with it. The Sunday of Jake's dinner arrived, and after much deliberation I decided to attend. I brought a bottle of wine and a homemade apple pie, my mother's favourite, though I'd modified the recipe to make it my own. Jake greeted me with a relieved smile when I arrived at his condo. "They're already here," he whispered as he took my coat. In the living room, Dad's barely said 2 words since they arrived. I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders before walking into the living room. My parents were seated side by side on Jake's leather sofa, looking oddly diminished somehow. My mother brightened when she saw me, half rising before uncertainty crossed her face. "Emily," she said, her voice wavering slightly, "it's so good to see you." "Hi, Mom," I replied, allowing her to embrace me briefly. "Dad?" My father nodded, his eyes meeting mine for just a moment before dropping away. "Emily, you look well." An awkward silence fell, broken only when Jake clapped his hands together. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Can I get everyone a drink?" The meal itself was surprisingly pleasant. Jake had become a decent cook over the years, and he'd prepared a roast chicken with all the trimmings. We made careful conversation about safe topics, the weather, Jake's recent cases, my new commercial space. "A storefront," my mother said when I mentioned it. "That's wonderful, Emily. I'd love to see it sometime if you wouldn't mind." "Maybe," I said non-committally. "It's still a work in progress." As Jake served dessert, my apple pie with vanilla ice cream, my father cleared his throat. "Emily, your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking since everything that happened, and we want you to know that we've made some changes." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "We've restructured the family trust," he continued. "It's now divided equally between you and Jake, with no conditions or restrictions on your portion. And we've amended it so that you have immediate access to your share, not just after we're gone." I blinked in surprise. The trust was substantial, not life-changing money, but certainly significant. And more importantly, this gesture represented a fundamental shift in how they viewed me and Jake, as equals. "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved. "It's what should have been done years ago." my mother said softly. We've been unfair to you for so long, Emily, favouring Jake, dismissing your achievements, forgetting important moments in your life. Like my birthdays, I couldn't help adding. She flinched but nodded. Yes, like your birthdays. It's unforgivable, and I don't expect you to forgive us. But we want you to know that we recognise our mistakes, and we're trying to be better. We're seeing a family therapist, my father added, the admission clearly difficult for him, to help us understand why I created such an unbalanced dynamic in our family. It's been enlightening and not always comfortable. I was speechless. My father, proud, stubborn Richard Parker, in therapy, admitting he needed help understanding his own behaviour. It was almost unbelievable. We'd like you to join us sometime, my mother ventured. For a session, I mean, if you're willing. Dr. Levine thinks it might be helpful for all of us. I'll think about it, I said. The same response I'd given Jake about this dinner. But this time, I meant it more sincerely. The fact that they were making such significant changes gave me hope that perhaps, just perhaps, a new kind of relationship might be possible. As the evening wound down, my father asked to speak with me privately. We stepped out onto Jake's small balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief from the emotional intensity of the dinner. I want you to know something, he said, gazing out at the city lights rather than at me. What happened? Taking your money, dismissing your business. It was never really about you. It was about me, my insecurities, my narrow definition of success. I waited, sensing he had more to say. I pushed Jake into law because that's what I understood. Prestigious career, clear path, measurable achievements, your creative work, your entrepreneurship. It was foreign to me. I didn't know how to value it properly. He turned to face me. But I'm learning, and I'm immensely proud of what you've built, Emily. Truly. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. Thank you for saying that, Dad. I know it doesn't erase the past, he acknowledged, or make up for years of favouritism and neglect, but I hope it might be a starting point for something better. If you're willing. I considered his words, weighing them against a lifetime of feeling secondary, overlooked, forgotten. The hurt didn't disappear with one apology, one restructured trust, one sincere conversation. But perhaps healing could begin here, with this small step toward understanding. I'm willing to try, I said finally, but I need you to understand something too. I'm not that little girl anymore, the one who desperately sought your approval and acceptance. I know my worth now, with or without your recognition. Any relationship we build going forward has to be based on mutual respect. He nodded solemnly. I wouldn't want it any other way. As we rejoined the others inside, I felt something shift within me. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but a willingness to consider the possibility of it. A recognition that people, even parents, can change if they truly want to. 6 months later, my storefront was thriving. Parker Designs had expanded to include 2 assistant designers and a small collection of ready-to-wear pieces alongside the custom work. The brass plaque Jake had given me hung proudly by the door, catching the morning light as I unlocked the shop each day. My relationship with my parents was evolving. We'd attended several therapy sessions together, painful but necessary conversations about patterns established decades ago. There had been tears and accusations, defences and apologies, but also moments of genuine connection and understanding. They'd remembered my 33rd birthday with a small but thoughtful celebration, dinner at my favourite restaurant, and a vintage sewing machine I'd admired months earlier. No lavish party like Jake's, but a sincere acknowledgement of my special day. It was a start. As I closed up shop one evening, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father and I were wondering if you'd like to join us for brunch on Sunday. We have something we'd like to discuss with you. I smiled at the familiar phrasing, though this time it didn't fill me with dread. I'll be there, I replied. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, came the response. That's all we need. And for the first time in my life, I believed her. The journey hadn't been easy, and it was far from over. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But standing in my own space, surrounded by the tangible results of my hard work and determination, I knew I had everything I needed to face whatever came next. My parents had always forgotten my birthday, but thrown lavish parties for my brother. But this time, they'd learned that I wouldn't be forgotten anymore. This time, I'd stood up for myself. This time, everything had changed, and so had I. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.